Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 37 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to make craft storage. I am going to show you how to make storage in this taquitos box because it is wide enough to hold the little yogurt containers so that when you stand this up and you slide them in, it will be wide enough to hold them in there. So whatever type of container you have, you'll just want to find a box that will fit that container on the little shelves that we're going to put in here. So if you have a thin box like a cereal box, you could do them this way, do them sideways so that they're not as wide, because then you could have a much thinner box. So just check your boxes and see what you have that will fit the containers you want. And then what I did, because we recycle our boxes, so this one was all torn down, so I went ahead and I taped it back together, and so that it was actually just a closed box. And now I'm going to just open up the whole front. Now, I already started, and then I thought I should show you how I did it instead of just telling you, so I stopped doing it. But I did cut right down. I just stuck my scissors right in here, and then I just cut a line up there. And then in order to easily get this out, I just went ahead and cut that, and I cut it off right here. Afterwards, I thought, no, you really should take that and just fold it in and tape it down. That will make that all much sturdier. So I already cut this little flap off, but I should not have done that. So just go ahead and, cut down the center of your box. And you can cut this any way that you want to. If you want to cut across here so that that whole thing folds in and you have a straight line. I don't know why, I just always cut to the corners. It's what I've always done. So we're just going to do like that. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to fold all of these in and tape them down to make it sturdier. So I'm going to burnish those folds because it wasn't something that will burnish it easily. Just burnish down those folds so that they're not fighting with the tape when I'm trying to tape it in. And I am using my own scissors and tape and knife and scissors. These are not the ones that we bought for the stash, but everything that I am using here, we have bought for our stash. So I'm not using anything that you shouldn't have. So, because I was building some bigger storage, and so I was just using things that I'm used to. So I'm just going to tape that flap down, and that just gives it everything you keep on there, just keeps it a little bit more sturdy, because these are not the thickest boxes. And so, this is just going to help it be thicker and sturdier. So just going ahead and taping those down. They don't have to be taped down super well, as far as you want to make sure that they are actually taped down, but you don't have to make sure you cover every little bit of them, because we're going to put supports inside that will hold them where they're at also. I didn't burnish that down, and I can really tell. I need to stick that over here for a second. I need to burnish that down because it was popping up so hard that it's going to fight with my tape while I'm trying to get my supports in there. So we're just going to get that one taped in there. And just tape it however you think is going to make it nice and sturdy. So, and I can tell that I'm a little wider here than I am here. When I taped it back together, I must have done, been off a little bit, but that's all right. So now we have our box that our containers will fit in. And it's even actually a little bit deep, but that's okay, because you could always stick something behind there. If you want it to be just the depth of your containers, you can cut it down before you fold it in and fold it back that far. I don't mind that because You know, I never know exactly what I'm going to. Could I even maybe fit 2 this way? Not really. 2 won't really fit that way. But I would prefer to have a little extra space here in the front than to have them sticking out like this. Because when they're sticking out like that, it's easy to catch them or to knock them or something. And so it's better to have them in a little ways, and you can always put something behind them to hold them out right to the edge. So now we have a box. So how do we make our supports? I do all of my storage this way. When you have a support, you want a support that's going to hold your shelf up. And so what we're going to do is we are going to build a support that will come down here, across here, and up here, that our shelf will sit on top of. And that makes it really nice and sturdy. And in order to figure out how long that's going to be, what you need to do is you need to measure your box. So when we measure our box is 4 inches deep. So when you do this, it's 4 inches deep. It is, we want to measure the inside of the box, not the outside edges. So inside of our box is 6 1/4, and top to bottom, it is just over 9 1/2, just shy of 9 3/4. And that is here where we have the flap and the flap. Over here, it's 9 3/4 inches tall, just because we don't have that little flap bending out. But so 9 3/4 is the measurement we'll use for our height. Okay. Now, in order to figure out how to make, we're going to take our foam core board and we're going to make it be down the side, across the back, and up the other side. And in order to do that, we need to figure out how long to make this so that it will make that distance. When you take your foam cord, we're going to score cut it, which means just cut the paper, and then we will bend it and it will snap. I'm going to show you that right here because I have one here. Okay, so you cut the length that you need, and then we're going to have the side length here. We're going to score cut it, and when you cut that paper and you bend it like this, it will snap. The foam will snap, but the paper on the other side will still be connected. So the one thing that you have to remember is we cannot do depth with depth, because what happens when you snap that and you fold it, you wind up with, this foam core board is 1/4 of an inch thick. You will need to know how wide your foam core board is, because you're going to subtract that from your measurements. Because this is now, we needed 4 inches deep, but if I made this 4 inches, it would be 4 1/4 inches before it hit the back of the box, because we now have this sticking out here. If we made this the full width of 6 1/4, that would be 6 1/4 plus 1/4 here, plus 1/4 here. It would be 6 3/4 inches wide when we snapped this, and it wouldn't even fit. So the way that you do it is, and see, once you snap that, that fits right in there, and a shelf will nicely set right on top. So this is how you do the measurements, and I wrote it down. So I'm going to hold it here, so if you want to, pause and write it down. And so what we're going to do is, this is how you get your measurements. And now I put 1/4 of an inch in here because my foam core board is 1/4 of an inch. If your foam core board is a little smaller than that, that is the amount that you will subtract. Use your ruler and use all of your little marks. So if it's not quite 1/4 of an inch, it might only be 3/16. 1/4 of an inch is 4/16. So if your foam core board is 3/16, that would be the amount that you would subtract. So to calculate the length of how long that support is going to be, you're going to take the depth of your box minus the width of your foam core board. So mine is 1/4 of an inch. So it's going to be the depth of the box minus 1/4 of an inch. Then plus the width of the box minus twice the width of your foam core board, because you're going to have it on each end. So that would be the the width of my box minus 1/2 of an inch, plus the depth of the box minus 1/4 of an inch, and that will be the length of your support. It's not as hard as it seems, and that's why I will put this here so that you can write it down if you need to. And remember, this 1/4 of an inch is not technically a 1/4 of an inch. That 1/4 of an inch is the width of your foam core board. I'm going to write that down here. Here's my pen. So this 1/4 of an inch that I'm talking about is actually the width of the foam board. Okay, so that's what this is. And this is the width of your foam board. Times 2. So it may sound hard, but once you start making them, you'll get the gist of it. And once you make a few mistakes, then you'll really start getting it. Because I can tell you right now, I have made these for a really long time, and there's a lot of times I still forget to take off the 1/4 of an inch. I cut them, I go to put it in, it's too big, it won't fit. Because now I've got that added length because of the folding of the supports. So that is how you get the length of, the length of your support. And then you're going to score cut it at the depth minus the width of your foam core board. So this is 4 inches deep. We will score cut it at 3 3/4 inches because it's going to lift up by 1/4 of an inch. So we'll still be 4 inches deep. So that is how you measure and cut your supports. So what we need then is we've got the depth of our box. Here, now I have it here. Okay, so the depth of our box minus 1/4 of an inch is 3 3/4. The width of our box minus 1/2 an inch is 5 3/4. The depth of our box on the other side minus 1/4 of an inch is 3 3/4. So the total length, adding those all up, it is 13 1/4 inches long. So I have cut already 13 1/4 inches long of a piece of foam board. So then you are going to score cut it at 3 3/4. That is 1/4 less than, it's the width of your board, the depth minus the width of your board. So we will score cut it at 3 3/4 and 9 1/2. Now you could also just score cut it easier, sometimes is 3 3/4 from this end and 3 3/4 from this end, which would wind up being at the 9 1/2 inch mark. Alrighty, so our supports then are going to be 13 1/4 inches long, and our little cups are 2 3/4 inches. So we'll make our shelves 3 inches tall, because that way we'll have enough room for those. And I like to have just a little bit of give in case something's sticking out the top. It makes it easier to get your hands in there and grab them. So these are cut to the right length, but not the right width. So we want 3 inches tall for our support. And I always, whenever I measure, make at least 3 lines so that I know that I'm straight. And actually, when I was making my other one, I actually did have one of my lines not in the right place. So, and that will make a difference. So you're just going to line those up. And I find the easiest way to cut foam board is with a razor knife. And we do have the razor knives that we bought for our stash. And just use a straight edge. Being very careful when you're cutting. And if I have to move my ruler, I don't lift my blade out. I just leave it there and then just line it back up. And it didn't cut all the way through, so I'm just going to, there we go. Okay, so now we have 3 inches wide, which is the height of our cup. So we'll see that that's going to fit, and yes, it is. And we'll cut this one too. Because we're 9 3/4 tall, we'll be able to do 2 supports, 3 supports. Oops, we want to make this 3 inches wide. We can fit 3 of those cups in there. You can do 3 supports. You could only do 2 and leave the last one. And let's see, what are we doing? We're doing 3 inches. I'm putting a last one down here because I know I have to move my ruler. And so I definitely want to mark down there when I move my ruler to make sure that I'm still straight. So we're just going to line those up. Make sure you keep your fingers out of the way when you're cutting. Make sure that you stand off to the side if you're pulling your knife towards you, so that you don't accidentally slip and cut yourself. Just line that back up again and finish. Okay, so there's 2 supports. And I really should have had 3 supports, but I only have 2 here. And that's actually okay. I don't always, I'm going to show you a box in a few minutes that I purposefully did not put a support in. So now what we're going to do is we are going to score cut this at 3 3/4. And sometimes when I'm doing a lot of measurements, I'm thinking 3 3/4, I'm thinking 3 1/4, 3 1/2. I'm thinking all of those numbers, and I accidentally do make those marks in the wrong place. So that's why I always do 3. And 9 1/2. 9 1/2. Okay, so we're going to score cut it here, and just to show you, those marks now should be, and it's a good way to double check yourself, 3 3/4 of an inch from the edge, and they are. So that is, those are the right numbers. So I'm just going to take this, hold it straight, and just cut the paper. Just the paper. There we go. So now it's still very solid. What you're going to do is you're just going to snap it and snap it. And now this should fit in our box. It should be the right width and the right height for the sides, and it is. So now we'll do this one. And again, we're going to do it at 3 3/4. And 9 1/2. I always do one at a time, at least until I get the very first one and I know my measurements are correct. Because like I said, I have sometimes forgot to do my deduction of the width of the foam core board, or I've deducted too much or not enough. So I always do one, try it. If it fits well, then I will do the rest. And I usually leave the very top one to measure at the end, because a lot of times your top one might be a little taller, it might be a little shorter. This one should work out pretty much to be 9 3/4 because we've got 3 and 3 and 3, and then we've got 3/4 inch foam boards to go in there. But, so we're gonna, again, we just scored the paper, it's a nice solid piece, and then we just snap it. Okay, so there's that one and that one. We need a shelf now between them. So the shelves are gonna be obviously 4 inches deep. We don't do any cutting off of the, remember not to deduct anything. For the shelf, it's how deep is it and how wide is it? So it's 6 1/4 wide and 4 inches deep. So we need to cut 2 shelves at 4 inches. I think this one is 4 inches. Yep, 4 by 6 1/4. So 6 1/4. And I don't normally draw a line if I'm cutting right away, because what's the point of drawing a line and then picking up your knife and cutting the same line? But if I want to do a bunch of measurements all ahead of time, just draw a line and be ready for it. So this shelf should fit side to side, and it does, and front to back, and it does. And there we go. That lines up really nicely with those. So we need another shelf for the top of here. So we need it to be 4 inches wide. And 6 1/4 inches, or I guess it's 4 inches deep, 6 1/4 inches wide. Go. And so there we go. And then, like I said, this box is kind of worked out to be just perfect sizing, but let's measure from here to the top, because it doesn't need another shelf at the top, although you can if you want to. So that is 3 1/4 inches tall. So we can either do another 3-inch shelf and put a piece of foam board there to cover it up, or we could do a 3 1/4 inch shelf and just not bother putting in, not support is what I should be saying. So our support can either be 3 1/4 inches tall. We won't need another piece of foam board because it will just go in like that and just hold everything together. Or we can do a 3-inch one and put a piece of foam board at the top also. Now, I don't put one at the bottom. You can also do that. Again, you'll adjust your measurements, and that's why I don't do the last one until I decide what I want to do. Because if I want to put a support at the bottom, then that's going to be another 1/4 inch up, so it'd be 3 inches left. And then if I want one at the top, then it would be 2 3/4. But sometimes, because this does make your box a 1/4 inch less deep than when you started. So sometimes that makes a difference. And it did make a difference in my last storage, so I didn't put anything at the top. But let's see here. We need one more support at the top. And so that we don't waste foam board by putting it up there. Well, we'll put one up there because, you know, that top is kind of a little bit messy and everything. So that will just make it more sturdy at the top. The bottom one is much nicer put together. So we will do that. So we're going to do 3 inches by 13 1/4. Let's see if this is big enough. So there's 12. I don't have 13 1/4 width there, so I'm going to have to do it. Going to have to do 3 inches 13. And always make sure you know where your knife's at. Okay, so I need 13 1/4. And because I don't know if I'll ever need another 3-inch piece, I'm actually going to just cut this much off my foam board. I'm not going to cut a full length of 3 inches because I might need this other bigger square. So just going to cut that right to there. Line that up. Go. And like I said, now I still have this wide piece here. It's shorter down here, but I didn't want to cut that all the way up and cut it off completely. So let's score cut this at, and I always write my measurements down so that I have them in front of me because I don't remember them from 1 second to the next. So we need 3 3/4. We're going to score cut. Yes, 3 3/4 and 9 1/2, 3 3/4, 9 1/2, 3 3/4, and 9 1/2. Use our ruler to cut a really nice straight line. Cutting just the paper. And give it a snap, give it a snap. Put it in there. And then we need one more shelf, 4 inches by 6 1/4. And then 90% of the time, I glue these in. Once in a great while, I think, I want to use it for a bit. Now, I've got a really messed up corner right here. So this is, excuse me, this is going to be my 6 1/4. I don't really want that messed up inch. And since I'm going to cut off, or corner, since I'm going to cut off about 1 inch, I'm going to cut off this side so that I'm not dealing with that. So let's turn it around and start measuring from that end. And it needs to be 6 1/4. That's another thing to kind of watch if you have the option of not using those bad spots. And then I'm going to make it 4 inches deep. So we'll cut this off because we're making a shelf. And there we go. So now we have our shelf. And we can put our shelf in here. And that right there makes it nice and sturdy. That really makes it nice and tight. This box just happened to be 9 3/4. I don't think I've ever really had it happen where it actually wound up 3 even spaces. But, and like I said, I will normally glue it in. And because this is so tight, I would just put some glue on here. Well, it doesn't even want to come out. But I would just fold these out, put some glue here, and fold them back. Just like that. And then put our little clamps on them and let them sit just until that dries. So if it was loose at all, then I go ahead and I will, you know, put glue all around the shelf there before I put it in. But because this is so tight, that isn't really necessary. If you glue the supports in, the shelves shouldn't go anywhere. And sometimes when I don't glue it, it is because I'm not sure. I have a box that I really like, but I'm not sure if my shelves are going to be exactly what I want. I might want to change them later. And so that way, then I don't. If I have a nice fit, then I don't glue them at all. Because that way, if I decide, I just want, instead of having 6 inches here, 3 and 3, I would really prefer to have like 1 3/4 and 1 3/4 and 1 3/4 with extra shelves in between, because maybe something like this would then, I would be able to put in 2 of those. Or maybe I would just want to put a shelf in there so that I could put another one on top of it. Or maybe I just want to do it at the top and put a shelf in at the top, and then I've got something else that I want to slide, like maybe ink pads. You know, if you only have a shelf that's just about this wide, you know, an ink pad would fit up there very nicely, maybe even 2 side by side. So, you know, that's the whole thing. You just decide whatever it is that you want to put in there, and that will just tell you how tall to make your support. And we've already done the whole, you know, the way to make the supports, how to measure them out. It doesn't matter what size box you have. If you measure them out like this, score cut them, and bend them, this will work every time, just so long as you pay attention to your measurements. And like I said, cut one first, make sure it fits, and then go ahead and cut all the rest. I've got somewhere, you know, I may make 10 of these supports because the shelf is really tall. So here is the support I was talking, and now these are going to fit in here like this. And then another one here and 2 more up there, and that will hold those really nicely, and that'll give me a place to support those. Or this can just be a shelf, and I don't need to put these in here. I made a small one so you could see me make it, and I could pretty much get it all into the frame, because the other one I made, I'm going to show you, but it's going to be hard to get it all. You're not going to be able, I won't be able to get it all in frame, but I will be able to show you how I did it. So this is the one that I did, and this is a vacuum cleaner box. So my husband just bought me an easy, like a light vacuum, because he does all the vacuuming, but I wanted something that was light that I could just do a little like touch-up vacuuming. And so he bought me this, and this box was twice this wide, so I literally just cut this box in half, and I made 2 of these. So, but there are the shelves, and remember how I said sometimes I don't do anything at the top? I did not put a support at the top. I glued these all in. And on these, I glued the end of the shelf because there's nothing on top of it to hold it down. Because if I remember how we did these, and these need to set up like this, and I have my sponge in there behind that goes with it. But if I were to put those on this shelf, they won't really fit. They just barely sit on the edge, and they're just gonna like fall off like this. And then I'm afraid that this will fall out, because if it sits on the lip of this, it gives it a little bit of an angle, and so this way it's completely on the shelf. It's not going to come off and have that fall out. It's going to, you know, it's going to keep that in there nicely. So I didn't put a support on this section because it would have been 1/4 inch deeper, and this would have been out here, and I didn't want this out here. So sometimes you need just that 1/4 inch depth makes a difference. So, but, you know, so we've got, you know, like I've got my flowers and our little beads and straw bits and, you know, staples and some paper beads and dragonflies and butterflies, and then the rest of them at this point in time are empty. But so this box is 3 shelves tall, and these fit on here very nicely, and they don't stick out. And they stick out just enough that you can grab them and put them back in like that. So, but this is how many. I wound up fitting 10 on each shelf this way, and 8 of the ones that I did sideways. So that is a really, really nice long storage bit that I am going to be able to use to keep my Build Your Stash and Craft stuff in. And it's what I really needed because I'm just running out of space. So actually, I will not be using these in here because this will just work nicely for me to put other things in. Maybe I'll build some little box drawers to slide in there that can hold things, or it's just nice to have things here where you can see them, but you can have them separated. So, because when you stack everything on top and, you know, keep stacking it and stacking it, you know, then you've got to, it always turns out you want the thing on the bottom. So it's nice to have a little bit of division between what you're storing. So that is our storage for today. I hope that that was clear. And I hope that if you try it, it goes well for you. Like I said, I can't even tell you how many storage boxes like this I have. I have a ton of them. Because I really like them, and I have a bunch of them that have these. My husband brings me home these tall containers with a lock top on them from work, and I've got a couple of them that hold those containers. So you can just use them to hold anything that you have, or just use them as a shelf. But they are really, really sturdy, and because you have the support holding it up, it's really, really sturdy. If I were to have put this in this way, that wouldn't be so sturdy holding it up. You want something on the side, at the back, and at the side. 3 sides holding up a shelf makes it really sturdy. And if your shelf is super long, I will probably put a support in these. There's 10 across the bottom. I will probably, at the 5 point, I will put a support right there, and I will put a support right here, because that's a really, really long shelf. But they still do hold really well, just the way that they are, even though they're that long. So, and then of course, you know, I normally put my weight at the bottom, you know, if I have really heavy things, because that is sitting on a shelf or something. And because this is so thin, you know, it may be knocked over easily. Now, you know, it's pretty sturdy, but normally I back it up against something. I just, you know, set it on something, and, you know, that it's against something that, you know, you see from the other side or whatever. Otherwise, if I don't have anything to set it against at all, sometimes I will put just a piece of foam board at the front, like this, all the way along the whole front. So I would take something like this and just put it maybe 1/2 inch or so underneath and let it stick out a little bit. Or you can do it all the way around so that it sticks out so you have a bigger base. But if I know that there's something where if this falls backwards, it's not going to make a huge mess. If it falls forward and everything falls out, that's going to make a mess. So this little 1/4 inch, you know, sticking out in the front makes it lean back just a little bit, so that if it does tip over, it's going to tip backwards if you have it in the middle of a table or something. Or just put a piece of foam board on it that's maybe 1 inch wider all the way around. That will help it stand up better too. But they really do stand up fairly well, just depending on maybe if you were to weight them in an odd way or something. I've really never had a problem, but like I said, I normally set them on a shelf or something where there's something behind them. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. I think that this is a great way to make your own storage, and you can make it with any box you have, a vacuum cleaner box, a food box, any kind of a box that you have. You know, just find something basically that's going to work for whatever you want to put in it. That's the biggest thing. So, well, I guess it's time for the dogs to go out and play, so I better go. Thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.